The Zephyrian Empire had spent the last 3,000 years perfecting what they called the elegant solution to stupidity, a galaxy-wide cultural evolution that had rendered warning labels as obsolete as stone knives and bearskins. When your average citizen possesses the collective wisdom of 17 generations and the natural caution of a species that survived by not poking glowing things in caves, you simply don't need someone to tell you that fire is hot or that jumping off cliffs might ruin your afternoon. This philosophy had spread across 47 civilizations like a particularly smug virus. The crystalline hegemony prided itself on never having a single industrial accident in 4 centuries. The void swimmers had eliminated the very concept of user error from their language. Even the notoriously reckless plasma dancers had managed to achieve a perfect safety record once they evolved past their unfortunate habit of using supernovas as nightlights, which made the current situation in the Galactic Trade Consortium's headquarters particularly awkward. "I'm sorry, Ambassador Korwick," High Arbitrator Vexthala said, her crystalline features managing to convey both diplomatic politeness and barely restrained exasperation. "But surely you understand our position. Your species has been in the consortium for exactly 43 standard days, and you've already managed to cause 17 separate diplomatic incidents, all because you refuse to remove these warning labels," supplied Ambassador Thane Korwick, a man whose weathered face suggested he'd personally tested every safety protocol humanity had ever devised. He gestured at the crate beside him, which bore more cautionary text than a pharmaceutical commercial. "And no, we won't be removing them." The assembled representatives from across the galaxy shifted uncomfortably. The methane breathers' translator units were working overtime to process concepts like "do not eat" and "caution," contents under pressure. The Hive Mind Collective was experiencing what could only be described as philosophical indigestion, trying to understand why anyone would need to be told not to stare directly into laser emitters. "But it's insulting," wheezed Ambassador Gorth of the Silicon Republic, his rocky exterior literally steaming with indignation. "My people have been manipulating quantum matrices since before your species discovered agriculture. We hardly need instructions on how to safely operate a simple human food processor." Thane's smile could have powered a small space station. "Funny you should mention that, Gorth. How's your medical bay doing after last week's incident?" The Silicon representative's crystalline structure dimmed noticeably. 3 of his people were still in intensive care after discovering that human kitchen appliances could, with sufficient creativity and a complete disregard for manufacturer specifications, be converted into impromptu mining equipment. The fact that they'd been trying to dice vegetables at the time only made it worse. "That was an isolated incident," Vexthala interjected smoothly, though her own people had quietly implemented new safety protocols after a Zephyrian philosopher had somehow managed to turn a human coffee maker into a device capable of brewing temporal paradoxes. "The point remains that warning labels represent a fundamental philosophical divide between our species. We believe in the inherent wisdom of sentient beings to make rational decisions. And we believe in the inherent ability of sentient beings to find 17 different ways to accidentally destroy themselves with a spoon," Thane replied cheerfully. "Funny how that works out." The room fell silent except for the gentle humming of life support systems and what sounded suspiciously like muffled explosions from the direction of the human quarters. Nobody mentioned the explosions. They'd learned not to ask. "This cannot continue," declared Prism singer Yethka of the Harmonic Convergence, her voice creating small rainbows in the air. "Your labels are corrupting our youth. Yesterday, I caught a group of younglings actually reading the instructions before using a simple meditation crystal. Instructions, as if the wisdom of the cosmos needed a user manual." "Did they follow the instructions?" Thane asked with genuine curiosity. "Well, yes, but that's not the point." "And did anyone get hurt?" "No, but..." "Sounds like the system's working perfectly then." Vexthala's patience, refined over centuries of diplomatic training, was beginning to show hairline cracks. "Ambassador Korwick, you must understand that what you call safety measures, we call an insult to intelligence. Your species treats every piece of technology as if it were a weapon waiting to explode." Thane's expression grew thoughtful. "You know what, Vex? You're absolutely right. We do treat everything like it might explode. His grin widened. Probably because we've learned that given enough time and human ingenuity, everything eventually does. The Galactic Court of Arbitration had seen many historic cases over its 800-year existence. The Great Trademark War of 2847, the infamous Who Owns Gravity dispute that had lasted 3 decades, the surprisingly complex legal battle over whether time travel constituted insider trading, but never had they seen 47 separate species unite in a single lawsuit against one relatively new member of the galactic community. The case file alone required its own gravitational field to keep organized. The prosecution will demonstrate, announced Chief Prosecutor Zenthara, a being whose species had evolved past the need for physical form and now existed as a particularly argumentative cloud of ionized gas, that humanity's obsessive labeling practices constitute nothing less than intellectual degradation on a galactic scale. The evidence was, admittedly, compelling. Exhibit A showed a crystalline hegemony research station where scientists had spent 6 months studying the warning label on a human flashlight instead of using it, convinced that any device requiring 47 separate cautions must contain revolutionary technology. Exhibit B documented the psychological trauma experienced by void swimmer children who had developed anxiety disorders after reading human pharmaceutical labels and discovering that apparently everything could cause drowsiness, nausea, existential dread, or spontaneous combustion. Furthermore, Zenthara continued, his gaseous form shifting to a particularly accusatory shade of purple, we have documented cases of entire civilizations grinding to a halt as their citizens become paralyzed by the sudden awareness that their daily activities might be dangerous. Ambassador Thane sat calmly through 6 hours of testimony, occasionally taking notes that he seemed to find amusing. When the Plasma Dancers representative testified that human warning labels had made their people afraid to dance near supernovas, Thane actually chuckled. Your Honor, wheezed the representative from the Methane Collective, my people have been safely processing atmospheric gases for millennia. But after reading human industrial safety protocols, our workers now refuse to enter refineries without 17 different types of protective equipment. Production has dropped 90%. And are your workers safer? Thane asked mildly. Well, yes, but any accidents recently? No, but that's not. Thank you, no further questions. Judge Kethmaran, whose species had evolved the ability to see probability streams, was getting a headache trying to follow the quantum implications of the case. Ambassador Korwick, you may present your defense. Thane stood, activating a holographic display that showed a peaceful blue-green planet. Your Honors, esteemed colleagues, I'd like to tell you a story about a species that learned to put warning labels on everything. Not because they were afraid of danger, but because they'd gotten really, really good at finding it. The first image showed early humans discovering fire. The second showed them immediately trying to cook everything they could find, including several things that definitely shouldn't be cooked. The third showed the invention of the wheel, followed immediately by someone trying to see how fast they could make it go down a hill. You see, Thane continued conversationally, most species develop technology to solve problems. Humans develop technology and then spend the next century finding increasingly creative ways to break it, weaponize it, or turn it into a musical instrument. Sometimes all three simultaneously. The courtroom watched in fascinated horror as the display showed human history, the invention of flight, followed immediately by aerial combat and stunt flying. The development of nuclear energy, followed by, well, everyone knew how that had gone. The creation of the internet, followed by humans using it to teach each other how to make explosives from household cleaning supplies. Every warning label, Thane explained, represents a lesson learned the hard way. Do not use this hairdryer in the shower exists because someone tried it. Do not attempt to stop chainsaw with hands or genitals is there because, well, you can probably guess. Vexthala was beginning to look distinctly uncomfortable. Surely you're exaggerating for effect. Am I? Thane's smile was positively predatory. Tell me, how long did it take your people to develop faster-than-light travel? Approximately 4,000 years of careful research and development? We figured it out in 6 months after joining the consortium. Want to know how? The silence in the courtroom was deafening. We read the manual for a Zephyrian meditation device, ignored all the safety protocols, and overclocked it until it punched a hole through space-time. The warning label now reads, "Do not use for interdimensional travel, time manipulation, or making really impressive fireworks displays." Judge Keth Moran's probability vision was showing him futures that made his species' legendary composure crack slightly. "Ambassador, are you saying that humans deliberately misuse technology?" "Oh, no, Your Honor. We don't misuse it. We just use it more creatively than the original designers intended." Which brings me to my demonstration. Thane produced what appeared to be an innocuous crystal formation, roughly the size of a dinner plate and humming with gentle harmonics that made several species in the courtroom visibly relax. "This," he announced, "is a Zephyrian harmonic resonance generator, Model 7 Alpha, used across 12 civilizations for meditation, spiritual enlightenment, and achieving inner peace. Completely safe, utterly foolproof, and according to its documentation, impossible to misuse due to its inherently benevolent design." Vexthala's crystalline features went through several interesting color changes. "Ambassador, that device has been in continuous use for over 2 millennia without a single reported incident." "Exactly," Thane beamed, "which is why I thought it would make the perfect demonstration. Now, would a volunteer from each species please show us the proper, traditional use of this device?" What followed was a masterclass in civilized behavior. The Void Swimmer representative placed her tentacles gently on the crystal, which responded with ethereal tones that seemed to calm everyone within a 50-meter radius. The Silicon delegate's rocky fingers drew forth deep, resonant notes that spoke of geological patience and mountain wisdom. Even the plasma dancer managed to coax delicate light patterns from the device without setting anything on fire. "Beautiful," Thane said appreciatively. "Absolutely perfect. Now let me show you what happened when we gave one of these to a human research team." He activated a holographic recorder. Day 1. Dr. Elena Vasquez and her team received the device for cultural exchange studies. Note how they immediately begin examining it from angles the original designers never intended. The recording showed a cheerful woman with wild hair and the kind of gleam in her eyes that usually preceded either breakthrough discoveries or insurance claims. She was turning the crystal upside down, sideways, and holding it up to various light sources while taking extensive notes. Day 2. They discover that reversing the harmonic sequence creates fascinating interference patterns. Also, that it can apparently detect subspace frequencies if you recalibrate the resonance matrix. The courtroom watched as the human team began connecting the meditation device to various pieces of equipment that definitely weren't in the original manual. Sparks flew. Several small explosions occurred. The humans took more notes and looked increasingly excited. Day 3. They figured out how to make it amplify quantum fluctuations. Dr. Vasquez theorizes it could be used for long-range communication, mineral detection, or possibly as a really unique musical instrument. The recording now showed the crystal glowing in ways that made several alien observers shift uncomfortably. It was producing sounds that no meditation device should ever produce, including what sounded suspiciously like a heavy metal guitar solo. Day 4. Breakthrough. They've discovered that by inverting the polarity and feeding the output back into itself, they can create a localized space-time distortion field. Dr. Vasquez notes this could revolutionize faster-than-light communication. Judge Kethmoran's probability vision was now showing him futures that violated several fundamental laws of physics. "Ambassador, please tell me this recording is fictional." "Oh, it gets better," Thane said cheerfully. Day 5. They figured out how to cook with it. The hologram showed Dr. Vasquez using the harmonically modified crystal to prepare what appeared to be a perfectly normal meal, except that the food was floating 3 feet above the cooking surface and occasionally flickering between dimensions. "The theoretical applications are endless," the recorded Dr. Vasquez explained to her team. "We've essentially turned a meditation aid into a reality manipulation device. I'm calling it the Vasquez Probability Cooker, Mark I." Vexthala was now a shade of blue that didn't exist in normal space. That's not possible. The harmonic matrices are specifically designed to prevent any form of dangerous modification," Thane finished. Funny thing about humans, we don't see impossible to misuse as a challenge, exactly. More like an interesting starting point. He picked up the actual crystal device. Now, I'm not going to replicate Dr. Vasquez's exact modifications, because the last time someone tried that, we accidentally created a small black hole that took 3 weeks to convince it didn't want to exist. But I can show you the basic principle. Ambassador, Judge Kethmoran said urgently, I really don't think. Thane had already begun adjusting the crystal's harmonic frequency in ways that made reality hiccup slightly around the edges. The key insight was that the safety features built into this device aren't actually safety features. They're just lack of imagination. Watch what happens when you simply reverse the polarity of the tertiary resonance chamber and the crystal exploded. Not in the traditional sense of explosion, which would have been manageable. Instead, it exploded conceptually, creating a rapidly expanding sphere of space where the normal rules of cause and effect had decided to take a coffee break. The courtroom's gravity began experiencing an identity crisis. Several delegates found themselves temporarily existing in two places at once, which was particularly awkward for the hive mind collective. Emergency klaxons wailed as reality glitched around the expanding anomaly. The court's automated systems began evacuating everyone to minimum safe distance, which turned out to be approximately 3-star systems away. Through the chaos, as she was being hustled toward an escape pod by her security detail, Vexthala finally understood. Humans didn't put warning labels on things to protect themselves from danger. They put warning labels on things to protect the universe from humans. 6 months later, the Zephyrian Empire's Department of Human Proofing had become the fastest-growing bureaucracy in galactic history. What had started as a simple quality control measure had evolved into a full-scale civilization preservation initiative. Vexthala, now bearing the title of Chief Safety Coordinator for Human-Adjacent Technologies, stood in her office surrounded by holographic displays showing the latest batch of required warning labels. Her favorite was still the one for the crystalline hegemony's new meditation crystals. Warning, do not attempt to use for cooking, reality manipulation, interdimensional communication, musical performance, mining operations, or as a substitute for proper starship navigation equipment. Side effects of improper use may include temporal paradoxes, spontaneous enlightenment, or accidentally achieving godhood. The irony was delicious. The same species that had spent millennia perfecting elegant solutions were now frantically trying to idiot-proof their technology against a species that had turned creative misuse into an art form. Status report, she requested from her assistant, a young Zephyrian whose job title was officially Predictive Human Behavior Analyst and unofficially Professional Warrior. The Void Swimmers have completed human-proofing their transportation network, he reported. New safety protocols include warnings not to use their bioships for racing, not to teach them Earth music, and definitely not to feed them anything humans consider spicy food after the incident with Dr. Chen's ghost pepper collection. The ghost pepper incident had required a full evacuation of the Andromeda sector when a Void Swimmer bioship had achieved faster-than-light travel through pure digestive distress. The Plasma Dancers have requested additional consultation on their stellar engineering projects. Apparently, they're concerned that humans might try to use their starlifting technology for barbecue purposes. Vexthala made a note. Given that humans had already figured out how to make s'mores using controlled fusion reactions, this was probably a legitimate concern. And the Methane Collective? They've implemented the new universal safety standard. If humans can touch it, assume they will find a way to break it, improve it, weaponize it, or turn it into a musical instrument. Plan accordingly. The truly remarkable thing was that it was working. Galactic accident rates had plummeted to historic lows, not because beings were being more careful, but because the warning labels were so comprehensive that even the most creative troublemaker could see the potential consequences. Crime rates had dropped 89% galaxy-wide after criminals started reading the safety warnings on their equipment and deciding their plans were too dangerous to attempt. The hegemony's former pirate fleets had largely transitioned to legitimate shipping after discovering that their stolen weapons came with warnings like may cause existential crisis, temporal displacement, or sudden urge to pursue honest employment. A soft chime indicated an incoming message from Ambassador Thane. Vexthala opened the communication with the weary resignation of someone who had learned to expect the impossible. Vex, great news! Dr. Vasquez's team has figured out how to safely reverse the courtroom incident. Turns out all we needed was a harmonic resonance generator, some kitchen equipment, and a really good understanding of probability mathematics. Please tell me you're not calling to ask permission to... Oh no, we already fixed it. Reality should snap back to normal in about 3 minutes. But we did discover something interesting about the fundamental nature of space-time that I thought you'd want to know about. Apparently, the universe has been running on what we'd call default settings for the last 14 billion years. Vexthala felt a familiar chill. Thane, what did you do? Nothing major? We just found the user manual. Turns out existence comes with a lot more customization options than anyone realized. The warning label's going to be epic. The communication ended, leaving Vexthala staring out at the stars and wondering if there was enough bureaucracy in the universe to contain a species that had just discovered the cosmic equivalent of administrative privileges. Somewhere in the distance, reality hiccuped politely and resumed normal operations. Now with 17% better efficiency and a faint background hum that sounded suspiciously like elevator music. The galaxy had learned, perhaps too late, that humans didn't put warning labels on everything because they were afraid of danger. They put warning labels on everything because they had already figured out 43 different ways to weaponize a meditation crystal, and they were trying to be polite about it. After all, good neighbors always warn you before they accidentally restructure local spacetime.